I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped onto the stage and saw the empty seats. Not just a few empty seats. An entire row. Front row, center. The ones my mom insisted on when I ordered the tickets months ago. "We need to be visible," she'd said. "This is a family achievement." The chairs stared back at me, blue plastic, folded neatly, untouched. No purses tucked underneath. No jackets draped over the backs. No awkward waving. No phone held up too high trying to record. Nothing. I almost tripped walking across the stage because my knees locked. My name echoed through the auditorium. Camilla Reed, followed by polite applause from strangers who didn't know me, didn't know how much it had taken to get here. I scanned the crowd anyway. Once. Twice. Still nothing. I smiled because that's what you do when you're graduating. You smile so your face doesn't betray the part of you that's cracking open. I shook the dean's hand, took the diploma cover, let the photographer snap the picture that would later feel like proof I'd imagined the whole thing. When I stepped off stage, the applause blurred into white noise. 4 years. 2 jobs. Scholarships stacked on scholarships. Late nights, skipped meals, rent paid a week late more times than I could count. And not one person who shared my blood thought it was worth showing up. After the ceremony, graduates spilled into the courtyard, laughing, crying, hugging their families. Parents held bouquets. Siblings posed for selfies. Someone popped champagne illegally and security pretended not to see. I stood near the fountain with my cap still on, diploma clutched in my hand, phone buzzing uselessly in my pocket. No missed calls. No texts. I checked my mom's location out of habit. She insisted we share locations for safety. Her dot blinked from home. So did my sister. I sent a text I immediately regretted. "Me, did you guys get stuck in traffic?" The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. "Mom, something came up, we'll talk later." That was it. No apology. No explanation. No congratulations. Just "we'll talk later," like I'd called about groceries instead of graduating top of my class. I sat on the edge of the fountain until the crowd thinned and the sun dipped low enough to sting my eyes. Eventually, a security guard asked if I was okay. I told him yes, because it was easier than explaining that the people who were supposed to love me had made a choice, and it wasn't me. Growing up, I learned early where I ranked in my family. There was my mom. Then my sister, Sophia. Then, somewhere far below, the idea of me. Sophia was 6 years younger but somehow always the priority. Her dance lessons, her cheer competitions, her birthdays that stretched into birthday months. My milestones were quiet affairs, achievements acknowledged with a nod, if that. When I got into college, my mom cried, not because she was proud, but because she said she didn't know how we'd afford it. I figured it out anyway. Loans, grants, 2 part-time jobs, a 3rd freelance gig writing code for a startup that paid late but paid enough. I sent money home when things were tight. Covered utilities, groceries, Sophia's extracurriculars, prom dress, makeup, shoes. My mom called it helping the family. I called it survival. 3 days after graduation, my phone buzzed while I was unpacking the last box in my new apartment. The place was small but clean. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, no roommates. The lease was in my name alone, the first thing in my life that truly was. The message was from my mom. "Mom, hey, we need $2,100 by Friday." No greeting. No context. I stared at the screen, already knowing. Me, for what? The reply came instantly. "Mom, Sophia's sweet 16, you know how important this is." I laughed, out loud, a sharp, ugly sound that surprised even me. They hadn't come to my graduation. But they wanted me to fund a party. I scrolled up, back to graduation day, still no congratulations, no acknowledgement, Just silence stretched thin over 3 days like it might erase what they'd done. Me, you didn't even show up. There was a pause this time. Then, Mom, don't start. This isn't about you. Something in me finally went quiet. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. I opened my banking app, selected send money, entered her name. $1. In the note I typed, "Congrats." Then I turned my phone face down and went back to unpacking. I didn't expect the fallout to come so fast. An hour later, my phone started ringing. I ignored it, let it ring again and again. Voicemails stacked up. My sister crying. My mom yelling. My mom crying louder. I didn't listen. Instead, I called my landlord. "Hi," I said calmly. "I need to change my locks." He hesitated. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "I just don't want anyone else having access anymore." There was a pause. Then, "I can have someone there tomorrow morning." "Today," I said, "please." I'd given my mom a spare key months ago in case of emergencies. She'd let herself in before without asking, gone through my fridge, my mail, my closet. No more. By evening, the locks were changed. New keys, new boundaries. I slept better that night than I had in years. The knock came the next morning. Not a polite knock. A pound. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. Then a voice. "Police department, open the door." My stomach dropped. I took a breath, looked through the peephole. 2 officers, neutral expressions, hands resting casually near their belts. I opened the door. "Yes." "Are you Camilla Reed?" "Yes." "We need to ask you a few questions." I nodded and stepped aside, letting them see inside. Nothing to hide. One officer cleared his throat. "Your mother contacted us. She's concerned about your well-being." "Concerned?" "She said you sent her a disturbing message," he continued, "and then cut off contact." I almost smiled. "I sent her $1, I said, "with a congratulations message." The officers exchanged a look. "And changed your locks," the other added. "Yes." "Why?" "Because this is my apartment." Silence. Then the first officer said carefully, "She implied you might be having a mental health crisis." I laughed softly. I graduated college 3 days ago. No one in my family showed up. Then I was asked for over $2,000 for a party I wasn't invited to. I declined. Another pause. "That's not a crime," the second officer said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." They asked a few more questions. Checked that I wasn't in danger, that no one was being harmed. Finally, the first officer sighed. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice, "you're allowed to set boundaries." I nodded. "We'll let your mother know you're safe," he said, "but we won't be returning unless there's an actual issue." "Thank you." When they left, I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mom. "Mom, how dare you embarrass us like this?" I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. Silence wasn't weakness. It was power. And I was only just beginning to use it. The first thing I did after the cops left wasn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't call a friend or post something cryptic online. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and made a list. Not an emotional list. A practical one. Every dollar I had ever sent home. I hadn't planned on it, not consciously. But as soon as my fingers touched the keyboard, something methodical took over. The same part of me that had survived finals weeks on 3 hours of sleep, that had learned how to stretch ramen and dignity across an entire semester. I logged into my bank account. Then my old accounts. Then Venmo, Zelle, Cash App. 4 years of transactions bloomed across the screen. Utilities. Groceries. Emergency. Rent help. Sophia needs this. I opened a spreadsheet. Date. Amount. Recipient. Note. By the time I was done, the total sat at the bottom like a quiet accusation. 47,380, 2.19. I stared at the number until it stopped looking real. Almost $50,000. Not a loan. Not an investment. Just given. I thought of every time my mom had told me, we're all making sacrifices. I thought of Sophia's closet, designer dresses with tags still on them, her constant manicures, the brand new car she'd been gifted last year because she needed it for school. I closed the spreadsheet without saving. Not yet. The messages started coming in waves. I didn't answer any of them. Mom, you're being dramatic. Mom, we raised you, you owe us. Sophia, you ruined everything. Mom's crying. Mom, this is what selfish looks like. Each one slid off me like water off glass. I muted the thread. Then I did something I'd never done before. I blocked my mother's number. Just like that. No announcement. No explanation. The silence that followed felt wrong, too quiet, like standing in a room after a fire alarm shuts off. I half expected guilt to come crashing in. It didn't. What came instead was clarity. I took the week off work. Not because I was falling apart, but because I was rebuilding. I closed the joint savings account my mom had insisted we open for emergencies. There had never been an emergency when I needed help, but the account had emptied regularly. I changed my email passwords, my cloud storage, my banking security questions. The answer to mother's maiden name became N.A. I updated my emergency contact. I removed my mom from my medical forms. Each step felt small, insignificant. Together, they felt like freedom. On Friday afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. Unknown, you think you're better than us now. I didn't respond. Another message. Unknown, Mom had to borrow money because of you. I blocked the number. Then another came in, and another. Different numbers, same tone. Anger wrapped in entitlement. I realized something then that made my stomach twist. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the hole I'd left behind. Saturday morning, I ran into Mrs. Alvarez at the grocery store. She lived 2 houses down from my mom, had known me since I was a kid, used to sneak me cookies when my mom forgot I was home. Oh, Camilla, she said, lighting up. Your mother told me you've been having a hard time. I forced a polite smile. Did she? Yes, she said you're going through something, that you've been acting out. Acting out. At your age, she continued gently, family is all you have. Something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't just about money. It was about control of the narrative. Did she mention she didn't come to my graduation? I asked. Mrs. Alvarez blinked. She said you didn't want them there. I let the silence stretch. I invited them, I said quietly. I paid for the tickets. Mrs. Alvarez's face fell. Oh, she said. And did she mention she asked me for over $2,000 3 days later? I added. For a party. Mrs. Alvarez swallowed. No, she said. I nodded. I thought so. We stood there for a moment. Then she squeezed my arm. I'm proud of you, she said, for what it's worth. I almost cried in the cereal aisle. That afternoon, I saved the spreadsheet. Then I added more columns. Context. Reason given. Outcome. Patterns emerged. Money requests spiked around Sophia's events. Vacations disguised as emergencies. Bills that didn't align with utility statements I'd once helped organize. And then there was something new. Transfers I didn't recognize. Amounts sent from the joint account to an account that wasn't my mom's primary. I followed the trail. The account belonged to a name I didn't recognize. but the address attached to it. My Aunt Rosa's. My mom's sister. I leaned back in my chair. That was new. I called my aunt that evening. She answered on the third ring. "Camilla," she said, surprised, "is everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "I just had a question." There was a pause. "About what?" "The joint account Mom and I shared," I said carefully. "Do you have access to it?" Silence. Then, "Your mother said you knew." "Knew what?" "She said you were helping," Rosa continued. "That you agreed to funnel money through different accounts because of tax reasons." My blood ran cold. "I never agreed to that," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "Oh," Rosa said softly. I closed my eyes. "Rosa," I said, "how long has this been happening?" 2 years, she whispered. 2 years. Money in my name. Moved without my consent. Used for things I'd never approved. I thanked her for telling me, hung up, sat there staring at the wall. It wasn't just betrayal. It was something else. Something heavier. That night, I wrote one final message. Not to my mom. To myself. You don't have to explode to end something. You can just walk away. The next morning, I deactivated my social media. Changed my number. And accepted a job offer I'd been sitting on for weeks. Different city. Better pay. No forwarding address. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I packed slowly, deliberately. Not running. Choosing. As I sealed the last box, my phone buzzed. My old number, one last time before the port went through. A voicemail from my mom. Her voice was different now, softer, careful. "Camilla," she said, "we need to talk. There are things you don't understand." I deleted it without listening to the rest. Because I understood everything I needed to. And I was done being the one who paid the price. I didn't leave in the middle of the night. There was no dramatic last look at the city skyline, no tears soaking into cardboard boxes, no impulsive speech whispered into an empty room. I left on a Tuesday morning. Because Tuesday mornings are forgettable, and forgettable was the point. The moving truck arrived at 8:00 a.m. sharp. I watched from the sidewalk as 2 men carried my life, condensed into labeled boxes, down the narrow steps of the apartment I'd only just made my own. "Everything going to storage?" one of them asked. "No," I said, "straight to the new place." He nodded like that made sense, like people moved on all the time. I handed him the address. Different city. Different zip code. Different future. By 9:30, the apartment was empty, cleaner than when I'd moved in, no trace left behind. I turned in my keys, thanked my landlord, and walked away without looking back. The new job was everything I'd hoped it would be, and a little terrifying. A mid-sized tech firm, quiet office, flexible hours, people who introduced themselves with smiles instead of expectations. No one here knew my family. No one asked what I sent home every month. No one assumed my success was communal property. I rented a small apartment again. Same rule as before, lease in my name only, no spare keys handed out. On the first night, I sat on the floor eating takeout, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and realized something startling. I felt safe. 3 days later, an email arrived in my old inbox, the one I'd forgotten to close. From my Aunt Rosa. Subject, "Please call me." I almost didn't open it. But Rosa hadn't yelled, she hadn't accused, she hadn't demanded. So I replied. "We spoke that evening." "She's panicking," Rosa said quietly. "Your mother." I leaned back against the couch. "About what?" "The money," she said, "and the questions." "What questions?" Rosa hesitated, the kind that start when the money stops moving. I let that sink in. Without my deposits, the shell game collapsed. Bills didn't get paid. Transfers didn't line up. Excuses didn't work anymore. She's telling people you abandoned the family, Rosa continued. That you're ungrateful. I smiled sadly. Of course she is. There's more, Rosa added. She's scared. Of what? Rosa exhaled. Of being exposed. That was when she told me the rest. My mom had been using my income as proof of household stability. Loans. Deferred payments. Credit arrangements. All under the assumption that my money would keep flowing. Worse, some applications listed me as a contributing resident. I hadn't lived there in years. That's fraud, I said slowly. Yes, Rosa replied, and now that you've disappeared, people are noticing. I closed my eyes. All that money, all those emergencies. I hadn't just been supporting the family. I'd been the cover. I didn't confront my mom. I didn't threaten legal action. I did something much quieter. I contacted a lawyer. Not to sue. To protect myself. We reviewed everything. The accounts, the transfers, the unauthorized activity. You did nothing wrong, she told me, but you need to formally separate yourself. So I did. A notarized letter. A financial disavowal. Documentation stating I had no knowledge of, or consent for, any accounts or obligations taken in my name. It went out certified mail. I didn't include a note. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I heard nothing. The silence felt different this time. Not heavy, not tense. Just empty. Like a room after furniture, been moved out. One evening, Rosa called again. They're selling the house, she said. I blinked. What? They have to, she explained. Too many things fell through. What about Sophia? She's furious, Rosa said. Her party was canceled. She's telling everyone you ruined her life. I pictured Sophia, 16 and used to everything bending around her. I felt no anger. Just distance. And my mom, I asked. Rosa paused. She's embarrassed, she said, and very quiet. That night, I took a walk through my new neighborhood. The air smelled different here, less exhaust, more trees. I passed families having dinner, couples arguing softly, people living lives that didn't involve me at all. I thought about how loud my mother had always been, how she filled every silence with need. Now there was nothing left to take. A month later, I got promoted. No fanfare, just a meeting, a raise, a nod of approval. I celebrated alone with a bottle of wine and a movie I'd been meaning to watch. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then it stopped. Then a voicemail notification appeared. I deleted it without listening. I never announced my success. I never defended myself publicly. I never exposed anyone outright. I didn't need to. The truth surfaced on its own, slowly, inevitably, once I stopped holding it together for them. That was the real revenge. Not destruction. Absence. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Just my name, spelled correctly for once, written in my mother's looping script. I stood in my kitchen, staring at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not a letter. An invitation. Family meeting. Saturday 3:00 p.m. Location, Aunt Rosa's house. We need to clear the air. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just an assumption that I would come. I placed the invitation on the counter and made coffee. I didn't plan on going, but I also didn't throw the invitation away. I kept it where I could see it while I got ready for work, while I answered emails, while I took lunch at my desk. By the time I got home that evening, I knew exactly what it was. Not closure. A last attempt. Rosa called that night. She's desperate, she said without preamble. I leaned against the window, watching the city lights blink on one by one. Is Sophia going to be there? I asked. Yes. And my mom wants me to what? Apologize, I said. Hand everything back over. Rosa sighed. She wants you to explain yourself, publicly. Explain. The word tasted bitter. Who else is coming? I asked. Everyone, Rosa said. Grandparents, cousins, people who don't know the full story. I closed my eyes. A tribunal. She wasn't trying to make things right. She was trying to make sure I couldn't walk away without consequences. Saturday came. At 2:58 p.m., I was not driving toward Rosa's house. I was sitting on my balcony with my laptop, reviewing a project timeline, sunlight warming my legs. At exactly 3:01 p.m., my phone buzzed. Mom, where are you? I didn't reply. At 3:07. Mom, this is important. At 3:15. Sophia, you're embarrassing us. I muted both threads. Then I did the only thing I'd planned to do. I sent one email. To family group email. Subject, clarification. I won't be attending today. For the record, I did not abandon anyone. I stopped funding financial arrangements I was never informed about or consented to. Any claims otherwise are untrue. I wish you all well. Camilla. I sent it. Then I closed my laptop. Rosa called an hour later. She read it out loud, she said quietly. And there was a lot of yelling, Rosa admitted. Mostly not from you. I smiled faintly. She tried to say you were confused, Rosa continued, that you didn't understand how families work. And someone asked why your name was on financial documents, Rosa said. I leaned back in my chair. And she didn't have an answer. The meeting fell apart after that. People started asking questions. Why I'd paid for things I didn't live there for. Why money moved through multiple accounts. Why no one had attended my graduation. Once spoken, the questions couldn't be swallowed back down. That night, I got one final message from my mom. Not angry. Not pleading. Cold. Mom, you didn't have to do this. I typed a response. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Finally, I set the phone down without replying. Because she was right. I didn't have to do anything. And that was the point. Weeks passed. Then months. I stopped checking the family grapevine through Rosa. I stopped wondering what my mom was telling people. I stopped caring. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Alvarez again, this time by coincidence, not proximity. She recognized me instantly. You look happy, she said. I thought about it. I am, I replied. That night, I framed my diploma. Hung it in my living room. Not for validation. For myself. I wasn't the villain in their story. But I was no longer the supporting character in it either. I was something else entirely. Absent. And finally, at peace. The strangest thing about freedom is how boring it looks from the outside. No fireworks. No apologies. No cinematic justice. Just days that stack up without dread. A year passed. I almost didn't notice it had been a year until my calendar reminded me. Graduation anniversary. I deleted the notification. Not because it hurt, but because it no longer mattered. My life filled in quietly. Morning routines. Projects that challenged me. Coworkers who knew me only as Camilla, not the reliable one, not the backup plan. I started sleeping through the night. I learned what my money could do when it stayed with me. Emergency fund. Retirement account. A vacation I booked without asking permission from anyone. I went to the coast alone and sat on the beach with a book I never finished, watching waves roll in and out without urgency. No one needed anything from me there. Rosa sent a message once, months later. Rosa, your mom asks about you sometimes. I stared at it for a long moment. Then replied, me, I hope she's okay. And meant it. But I didn't ask for details. I heard fragments anyway. Sophia dropped out of school for a semester. The house sold at a loss. My mom took a job she complained about constantly. The world didn't end. It just adjusted. One evening, while reorganizing a drawer, I found the old spreadsheet. The one I'd made on the day everything shifted. I opened it, scrolled through the numbers. Then I closed it and deleted the file. Not out of denial. Out of completion. I didn't forgive them. Not formally. Not ceremonially. But I let go of the version of myself who kept waiting to be chosen. That was enough. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, I invited a few friends over. People I'd met after everything. We ate too much, laughed too loud, argued over a board game. At one point, someone asked, "Does your family live nearby?" I thought for a second. No, I said, not really. And that was true in every way that mattered. Later, after everyone left, I stood in my living room. Diploma on the wall. Plants by the window. A life that no longer required justification. I realized something then. The loudest revenge wasn't exposure. It wasn't confrontation. It was building a life so full that the people who tried to empty you no longer fit inside it. Somewhere out there, my mother probably still tells her version of the story. Where she was wronged. Where I changed. Where things fell apart because I left. She's allowed to believe that. I know what actually happened. I stopped bleeding for people who never planned to stop cutting. And I lived.